And just to clarify, PCOS, if you're not familiar, polycystic ovarian syndrome, I feel like it's really up and coming. I think doctors are becoming more aware and doing testing with it. I found out I had PCOS years ago, and I did it through 2 different tests, an ultrasound and then blood work as well. But I would say through diet, lifestyle, stress management, supplementation, completely reversed it.
Because as we know, balancing your blood sugar is probably, the most important thing that you can do with this pandemic of diabetes that we have in our country right now. We need to work on balancing our blood sugar. And we know that excess sugar is stored as fat. So whether it's for weight loss or just inflammation in the body, we know that this is really important and we need to get control over it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of For Life, a wellness podcast by LifeSeasons. Today, we have a returning guest. She was way back in the show when it was early on. Meg Thurlow, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back. Now that we've had a few, under our belts, I feel like I can not be so awkward on here.
We like the awkward. We welcome the awkward, Meg.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Don't worry. I'll bring it.
Awesome. Well, I just want to give a really quick recap of your history with LifeSeasons. Maybe we can bottle the 8-9 years in 30 seconds of where you started with the company and where you are now.
Yeah. So I've been with LifeSeasons for almost 10 years now, which is just so crazy to say. It doesn't feel like 10 years because I feel like so much has changed. We've grown so much as a company and my role has changed so many times. And it doesn't feel like 10 years in a really good way, when someone could be at a job for a year and it feels like eternity. So, I love this company. I mean, Niki, I brought you on telling you how it doesn't feel like a job. Like I truly wake up and love what I do every single day.
I remember you telling me that when we were kind of having like a small little interview off the record interview. And you told me, I seriously wake up every day and I'm shocked that this is my job.
Yep. And you thought the same. I didn't lie to you.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So basically, I started off as a brand ambassador, and then I grew into a territory sales manager for Southern California. So basically just owning that territory, managing the accounts, opening up new accounts, trainings, promotions, whatever I can do to be that point person for LifeSeasons, for any store from a Sprouts to a Whole Foods to your mom and pop health food store down the street. So I did that for like 8 years. Mm-hmm. And then I grew into key accounts manager. So kind of dealing with more of those like larger accounts nationwide, like your Sprouts and your vitamin shops and Whole Foods. And then now I have just stepped in as national sales manager. So,
yeah. And nobody deserves this as much as you do. Your experience, your knowledge, your ability to integrate business, education, and relationships as well, has really paid off for you. And you've just done it in such a good way that I know you're really going to succeed in this role. And one thing that I do want to press into is the education part. So all sales reps have a different method or driving force. Maybe they're really strong in relationships. Maybe they're really strong in business. You and I, we loved the education. And I think that's what made our job fun. It made it engaging, is the education component. And that was that is one of the main reasons I brought you on, is your education, the passion for understanding the science behind the formulation and the way you even deliver the message. Because if we're just spitting out facts and science, sometimes that can go over people's heads. So that was one thing that I really loved about the way you communicated with your store, is on education. Now, before we dive in, I want to do something a little bit fun, kind of an icebreaker, because the conversation in this season is all on blood sugar. What we eat, what we drink is really important and dictates where our blood sugar is at. So Meg, what are you drinking currently and what did you have for breakfast?
Okay, so what am I drinking? It looks really gross.
Is that
right
Shrek's
now.
swamp water?
Swamp water is what I'm drinking, and the swamp water consists of a greens powder, and then 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar.
Ooh, feisty.
Yeah, I mean, I actually love the taste of apple cider vinegar. I know it's kind of across the board. People love it, they hate it. I love it, and we will get into why I put this in my drink a little bit later.
Awesome.
For breakfast, I ate egg bites. So I made these little egg muffins that have spinach, some organic sausage in there, some tomatoes and cheese. This is a new thing for me because I am trying to eat a more savory breakfast. And this was a big change because I was eating a yogurt bowl that was stacked with fruit, that it was so tasty. So
Wait, tell me, break down this yogurt bowl, because mine is a yogurt bowl of different sorts, but I want to hear what yours is.
Yeah. So the yogurt bowl, so I use like the full fat Greek yogurt, and then I used Catalina Crunch, which if you haven't tried that, it's a delicious, healthy cereal that doesn't have any sugar. It's keto friendly. It has a ton of fiber. So that's great. But I was loading it with pomegranates and blackberries and blueberries, and it's very tasty and healthy, but I didn't realize how much sugar I was having first thing in the morning.
To be fair, that doesn't seem like a lot of sugar, because you're having not trying to convince you to go back there, but the only thing, maybe the pomegranate seeds, but berries are some of the lowest in sugar.
Okay.
I mean, I thought you were going to be stacking it with like oatmeal and mangoes and pineapple. In comparison to most yogurt bowls, I would say you're doing pretty hot. So if you want to integrate that every once in a while, from my non-expert opinion, and maybe just make sure to balance it out with a little bit extra protein and fat, because I believe the sweet spot of protein for breakfast is about 30 grams. So maybe a scoop of protein powder, a tablespoon of chia seeds, because that's going to have our source of omega-3s, which we actually don't get a lot of unless you're snacking on sardines during during break. So I do a tablespoon of chia seeds, because you're going to get the fats, you're going to get the protein and the fiber, and that's going to kind of help balance out the small amount of sugar in the berries. So that was actually not as wild as I thought it would be. So
maybe I'll go back because it's so tasty. I actually got the idea from you because I know that you're like the yogurt bowl queen. Is that what you're still eating for breakfast?
So I've changed it up a little bit. And so I am 10 months postpartum, and was breastfeeding this whole time and kind of weaning. I'm not purposely, it just happens, I think, with the amount of fitness. And so I'm not producing as much, meaning I'm not burning as much. And, you know, my menstrual cycle's back. So my hunger and hormones are all over the place. But I am back to my berry bowl, and I've always called it a berry bowl, but not every day it contains berries. So right now what it is cottage cheese. I do a scoop of whey protein, and I know not everybody's a protein powder or protein bar person. There's going to be an episode coming up with Ed Jones from Nutrition World. And one thing that he mentioned that I thought it just never occurred to me is the amount of protein that we need on a daily basis for optimal well-being sometimes is higher than we can consume through food. Maybe you're just not in the mood, or, you know, I'm trying to lean more plant-based. And when I say plant-based, I don't mean vegetarian or vegan. I've done that. I mean, just majority of the food on my plate is from vegetables. And so I'm just not gravitating towards meat quite as much. But the thing is the meat that I am choosing or wanting to buy, the super high quality, I can't necessarily afford right now.
Yeah.
And so what he mentioned is the whey protein that I'm consuming is probably a higher quality protein source than if I bought meat from the store. Does that make sense? Like the protein powders, because they're avoiding antibiotics, they're doing all these regulations to make sure it's a super clean protein. And even if I'm buying organic meat, you got to really buy it straight from the source, organic, grass-fed, all these different things to make sure the quality is the same. Yeah. So the protein powder I'm having is probably a higher quality than the meat itself. So with that being said, I do cottage cheese. I do a scoop of whey protein. I do a tablespoon of chia seeds. I mix that up. Sometimes add a little bit of almond milk just to add in more liquid because the chia seeds absorb that. Yeah. So I put that in overnight. And then in the morning, I used to do frozen blueberries or 1/8 a cup of dry oats. I'm not really doing that right now unless it's after a workout, just to boost my glucose levels. I do a ton of cinnamon, and I'll do a big scoop of almond butter or a peanut butter. And that's pretty much what I'm having right now. I'm not generally a savory person for breakfast. I totally believe it, and we'll go into the why. I just tend to be more savory later on in the day. And so I feel like for most people, a sweet breakfast is loaded with sugar, where I feel like I'm able to craft that sweet flavor without the added sugar. Yep. So that's what was breakfast. And then this morning for my drink, I kind of usually do my coffee concoction. I'll do half calf with adaptogen powder. So there's reishi, there's maca, there's cordyceps in there. I do a little bit of liquid stevia. I do some almond milk and cinnamon in there. So that's what I'm drinking.
Niki, you got to come out with a cookbook. I would buy it in a second.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, well, maybe I'll add that to my list of things to do. So
nice.
Anyways, okay. So I think the reason why we're talking about the food and the drinks is you and I really connected over this gal on social media. Glucose Goddess is her official name, but her real name, Jessie. She has a book, Glucose Revolution. I blew through it, highlighted so many different components. Absolutely love what she's doing. She takes the science and really makes it easy to understand. But there's a few key components that she discusses that helps regulate our blood sugar. I'd love to explore that and why regulating our blood sugar is so important and the things that she recommends implementing.
Yeah. So what really sold me on her is, I follow so many different food bloggers and the paleo, the keto, we bounce back and forth, and you hear one thing one day and then another thing another day. And you're like, what am I supposed to believe? What am I actually supposed to be eating for breakfast? How am I actually going to lose weight? What's actually the healthiest option? So when I came across Jessie, or the Glucose Goddess, and I saw that she's in France, she's a French biochemist. And she actually wears this in France. You can actually get this glucose monitor.
You can here too. You know that, right?
Now you can. Yes. This is a new thing. But when she first started doing this, you couldn't. So she has this monitor that she wears on her arm for, I think it's like 2 weeks. And it's actually showing, she goes through in a day what she eats and how her blood sugar spikes based on what she eats. And so through all of this research, her personal experiences, and through research, she's found there's a specific way of the order of foods, and it will dramatically affect your blood sugar. So her order of food is going to be eat your veggies first, and then you can have proteins and fats, and then you can incorporate starches and sugars. So just as a big picture example, she would eat a bowl of broccoli, and then she would eat something like that, she might not normally eat, but just to show you the difference, she would eat like a bowl of mac and cheese. Very high carb, right? So she would eat this broccoli and then the mac and cheese, and her sugar would have a little spike. But if she was just starving and she went to just eat straight mac and cheese, her sugar skyrocketed and then dropped dramatically. So what's really cool about that is it's showing that we're not necessarily saying you have to eat these things to be healthy. You can only eat almonds all day to lose weight. It has a lot to do with, if you do want that treat, have this first, and you can balance your blood sugar, because as we know, balancing your blood sugar is probably, the most important thing that you can do with this pandemic of diabetes that we have in our country right now, we need to work on balancing our blood sugar. And we know that excess sugar is stored as fat. So whether it's for weight loss or just inflammation in the body, we know that this is really important and we need to get control over it.
I love that you mentioned that it's not, I mean, weight loss is a huge component, but let's say you have an individual who's naturally thin. There still could be other things going on in the body. Inflammation. Yeah. Inflammation leads to so many different chronic illnesses. And one thing that I did want to just piggyback, when you say veggies first, I want to make sure and clarify that this is non-starchy vegetables. So you don't necessarily want your potato or your yams or I don't know if jicama is probably, I think jicama is not that most people are snacking on jicama, but having those non-starchy. So think of your colorful vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, carrots, and actually, let's take that out. But yeah, focusing on your non-starchy vegetables. And it's funny because I take this one to heart. And so with Emma, my daughter, we get up pretty early. And so, we're all in the kitchen around 6:30. And my husband will see me snacking on broccoli or Brussels sprouts or whatever roasted veggies I've had in the fridge at 6:30 a.m. Now, not everybody's going to be able to do something like that. And the good thing is, these 4 things that Glucose Goddess discusses and that Meg and I will kind of unfold, if you can do all 4 of these, fantastic. You are going to optimize your blood sugar levels to the best ability. But if you can just do 1, or if you could do 3, or even if it's, I can do the veggies first, but not for breakfast, it's more of, afternoon, then do that. Whatever works. Take these to the best of your ability. And maybe let's say, okay, how can we do veggies first for breakfast? Maybe you have your scramble and normally you put spinach on it or some tomatoes. If you cook up your eggs and then maybe cook that on the side, even eating that spinach and the tomatoes first, even seconds before the eggs, she's shown that it's made a difference. So, find the way that can work sustainably in your day, in your life, and try to pursue that as best as you can. So order of veggies or order of food first. What is the second suggestion she offers?
So I don't know if importance wise, but the other one is go for a walk right after you eat for 10 minutes. And I think you have up until a half an hour. Like you don't need to finish your meal and start walking.
She actually, I looked into further research and I can't remember if it was her or somebody else. And just because I found this research doesn't mean it's complete truth. She said up to 70 minutes, 70, wow, which I thought was a lot. And then also I saw another article that said that there's even research that shows 2 minutes of movement. Just 2 minutes, as little as 2 minutes of movement can make a difference. Now, obviously, the more we do, the better, the more glucose you can utilize. I would say opt for 10 minutes if you can, and that could be walking. The whole purpose is moving, using your muscles.
Yeah. And that's an easy one because it's not like 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes. Just go walk your dog, right? He wants to be walked. Go walk your dog. So that's an easy one. The other one is a shot of apple cider vinegar right before you eat. This one was pretty fascinating to me, obviously, because we're in the supplement industry. But I always knew that apple cider vinegar was really good for blood sugar. But when she would show her chart of just having, do you remember how much it is? I think it's 2 tablespoons.
If that. I feel like it was surprisingly low.
Yeah. So she would just have that right before she would eat. And it is a dramatic decrease. It really does balance out your sugar pretty fast. So we love apple cider vinegar. And if you're like, I don't want to do that one, that's okay. Like we're saying, if you want to do the food order or you want to go for the walk or the last one, the savory breakfast, you can incorporate a few things. And we will get into, you don't have to drink apple cider vinegar because you could take it as a supplement.
Totally. Good point. And another thing with apple cider vinegar is when she says take it as a shot, we want to make sure that we're diluting it in water. You don't want it directly because it can break down the enamel of your teeth. And another thing is you shouldn't have a burn when you're drinking it. That's a usually that is an indicator that you're not diluting it enough. So if you still feel that burn, add more water to it. Something that I used to do, I mean, now I'm totally fine just putting it directly in water. Add a good amount of water, sprinkle some cinnamon, maybe some vanilla liquid stevia. And I can have a separate conversation on stevia. I think any sweeteners we got to be cautious with, but just a little drop or two, it makes it a really warm, like apple pie kind of drink. I mean, that's taking it far. It's not an apple pie, but but it makes it a little bit more makes it easier to enjoy if you're really turned off by the idea, but just making sure you're diluting it in water. And the fourth thing, like you mentioned, savory breakfast, because it's not most people, when they go for a sweet breakfast, it's not my kind of yogurt bowl where it tastes sweet, but it's really low in sugar. It's generally very high in sugar. Acai bowls. People think that these are so healthy. And to be honest, the antioxidants and benefits in these fruits really don't outweigh the sugar impact and inflammation you're getting. And you think about an acai bowl. I mean, the smoothie itself is probably 30, 40 grams. Then you're topping it with banana, honey, granola, and whatever else. That is candy. Because yes, there are nutrients.
A Coca-Cola for breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if that's your first meal of the day. So we're not saying you need to go 0 to hero, but just being conscious of what we're putting in our body. And generally a savory breakfast generally is lower in carbohydrates. Anything else to add on Glucose Goddess, or any takeaways or anything that you've noticed?
So just on that savory breakfast topic, for anyone that's ever had, oatmeal or a pancake or, these delicious breakfast foods that we all eat, you just get hungry. I mean, obviously we're talking about the blood sugar, but because you've been fasting all night and it's your very first thing, starting with a savory breakfast and having more high protein, it will set you up for the rest of the day to be easier, and you're going to have less cravings. Because when you start off with just like a burst of sugar, you're getting hungry faster, you're getting more cravings. So then the whole rest of your day is harder. And then you get in that, if you're like me, you get in that mentality of, well, I already screwed up, so I'll just keep eating bad the rest of the day, which is a terrible mentality to have. But I know there's other people out there that also have this. So try and start savory, and then you can slowly work your way into the other things. But I do think that's the number one thing she says is start, if you can, do a savory breakfast.
Absolutely. Love that. So if we try these things and we want to take it up a notch, or if we want to gravitate and try a supplement, we have 2 options from LifeSeasons that are going to be supportive for weight management. The first one that I wanted to explore is our metabolism formula. I know that you have a unique approach to talking about this formulation and what it addresses in the body. I'd love to hear what that is.
Yeah, so LifeSeasons Metabolism is a phenomenal formula. It's also, when we're just talking, you're in the supplement section of a health food store, right? This is a tough category because there's a lot of people there that are looking for that magical pill. What am I going to take that's just going to make me drop all this weight really quickly? And they're kind of in this mentality of that eating right isn't working for me. The exercising that I'm doing isn't working for me. So I'm looking for something else. And we have to get away from that way of thinking. We need to look at those 2 things are non-negotiable. We have to do those things. You can't cheat the system. But what else can I add that's going to kind of get me over that hurdle and take me to the next step? So that's where something like metabolism is going to come in. So when we're just talking about metabolism in general, what are the issues that we're having? So let's just break it down into the 3 main issues, right? Our 3 main issues are going to be as we age, or if we've done these crazy diets, our metabolism is slowing down. It's not what it used to be. Or maybe it never has been really fast. So a slowing metabolism. The second issue is going to be excess sugar being stored as fat in the body. And then the third issue is overeating, whether that is, it's that time of the month, or you're in a mood, or you're bored, you're just you're putting excess calories in your body for some reason, right? So what I love about this formula is we're actually addressing all three of those issues, right? It's not just we're speeding up your metabolism, or this is an appetite suppressant, or we're going to work on the sugar. It's going to help with a little bit of everything. So for the slowing metabolism, so to help speed up the metabolism, we need to heat up the body and we need to increase circulation. So some of the ingredients that we have for the metabolism is cayenne pepper, green tea, green coffee bean, apple cider vinegar, right? So we know apple cider vinegar we're going to see that kind of throughout all of those things. And then we have excess sugar being stored as fat. So as we were just talking, right, with our blood sugar. So if you have too much sugar that's not being utilized for energy, your body is taking that and it's storing it as fat. So we have things like chromium. We have a really great therapeutic amount of chromium in there at 500 micrograms. And Niki, I know you're going to want to talk more on that. We have the apple cider vinegar, as we were just talking about, is really great at quickly balancing out blood sugar. Green coffee bean, which is going to be high in chlorogenic acid, which is going to help balance out blood sugar. Did you want to touch on chromium a little bit more?
Yeah, I love the way you covered this, and there's so many good ingredients in this. And chromium, I've discussed in a few of our previous podcast episodes, but the way I like to explain blood sugar is kind of think about your grocery store. When there's a lot coming in and there's a lot on the conveyor belt, think about that as a high amount of carbs in our system. And the clerk can generally keep up with the products on the conveyor belt. But when we're consuming a ton of carbohydrates, or there's a ton on the conveyor belt, there's people waiting in line, maybe the clerk is sick or has to call off or just can't handle it, things start to get chaotic, bottles start breaking, the egg carton starts falling. We're not able to facilitate and grab those groceries, put it in the bag, and be able to shuttle and use, for food to turn into energy. Mm-hmm. And so chromium, think about that as your extra bagger. It's going to be there to help facilitate that movement and that processing in case there is an overload or an influx of those groceries or that glucose in the body. And so chromium is going to be really effective at mobilizing that sugar. And like you mentioned, we are using that therapeutic dose at 500 micrograms. There's studies that show you need about 500 micrograms in order for it to be really effective. Mm-hmm. A lot of formulas out there are using a little bit less. So I love that we have the chromium in there. Theobromine. Curious, why are we putting theobromine in this formula?
So our last part of metabolism issues, right? Overeating. So whether we're bored or, it's just more habit, like you're in the house and you're going to snack, right? So we have things in there like theanine and theobromine and the Andean cocoa seed extract, and those are all helping with mood. And they're actually, a lot of things that help with mood are actually going to be an appetite suppressant in a way because they're so correlated, right? So yeah, we're going to help with those cravings and overeating with the theobromine. Theobromine is actually found in chocolate, right? Mm-hmm. It's actually why you eat chocolate.
That's the compound in chocolate that the dogs are allergic to. And one thing too that I like to point out in theobromine is that at LifeSeasons, we use holistic formulations that work synergistically together to help balance out your body. And so this formula does have some stimulants in there. Obviously, that's what we're trying to do. So you have some of that caffeine, and it's a very small amount of caffeine, but you have that stimulating effect. We also want to make sure to balance that out so you don't get overstimulated, you don't get the jitters. And theobromine and theanine are going to be really effective at calming and modulating that caffeine so that you can stay stable, that you have this very good calmed focus, you're productive, you're not overstimulated and ready to, sit on the couch and cry in a ball.
And I don't know if you said this, Nick, but there's like 13 milligrams caffeine in this entire formula.
Fantastic. Which is less, I believe it's less than a cup of decaf coffee.
I don't know if it's less than a decaf, but just to put it into perspective, a cup of coffee, like we're talking like a cup, like probably
not a traditional mug.
So a cup is 75 to 150 milligrams. So if you're having a small mug, you're probably getting around 2 to 300 milligrams of caffeine. So this is very low. If you are sensitive to caffeine, you should be totally fine taking this formula.
Agreed. I had a client way back in the day, and she said, I really want to take this, but I just can't. I have a severe sensitivity to caffeine. She finally did it. She's like, my husband's home. I don't have work for the next day or so. I'm just going to try it out. And she was blown away. She didn't have any issues with it, no sensitivity. So that's cool to hear. So if that gives you any encouragement to try this formulation out, then I'd highly recommend it. So we have metabolism, and then one of our newer products from our essentials line. So this is the LifeSeasons therapeutics line. Those are going to be our traditional formulations, but our essentials are going to be single isolated ingredients that you can stack on top of your formulations that you can utilize instead. Maybe if you have a sensitivity or an allergy. So our essential, we have berberine. I know that this is an ingredient that is very much, it's beyond up and coming. It's here to stay. It's, you've experienced it in the stores, that it's a hot commodity right now. People want it, especially with the conversation around Ozempic. And, people are saying it's the natural form of Ozempic. What do you like about berberine, and what is that doing in the body?
Yeah. So berberine, it's been so interesting to see this, TikTok has just blown up berberine. It's crazy. The thing that I love about it is sometimes we've been in this industry a while. We see a lot of fads come and go pretty quickly. But what I love about berberine is it's such an amazing ingredient and supplement that we can take for so many different things, that it's not the worst thing to ever go viral, right? I think it's going to stay because it is it has so many uses, and it's, recommended for so many different conditions. So berberine is awesome. We just need to take it correctly. And obviously we have people out there calling it nature's Ozempic, and people taking double, triple the amount. And we'll go into.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that, because you're in the stores. I'm not hearing kind of what's happening with that. What are people just overdosing on berberine?
So basically, if you go on TikTok, you type in berberine, you go down a rabbit hole, people are calling it nature's Ozempic. And the recommended dose for berberine is, I believe, 900 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams a day. So when someone hears this is good for weight loss, what do? They're like,
10,000.
4,000 or 5,000 milligrams a day. Then they're experiencing gastrointestinal issues. They're running to the bathroom. It's going right through them. So we recommend just stay within the dose, try it out, right?
And we're using a hefty dose. We're using 1,000 milligrams in our formula.
Yeah. So berberine is a plant alkaloid that's found in leaves, twigs, bark of plants like barberry, Oregon grape, and tree turmeric. So you'll see it kind of with various different names too, because it's actually coming from the bark and twigs of those trees.
Right.
And so it's been used forever in Ayurvedic medicine, in traditional Chinese medicine. Some of the uses, obviously we're talking about blood sugar, but it's also an antimicrobial, an anti-diarrheal agent. So there's also studies out there that have shown that it can even help lower the LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really cool is some studies have actually shown that there's evidence that some clinical trials that were done that were conducted in people with type 2 diabetes suggest that berberine's glucose-lowering effects may be on par with some anti-diabetic drugs or standards of care. That's actually, if you go on, I use Examine, which is a very reputable source. That's coming directly from there. So there is a good amount of research that's been done on this actually lowering blood sugar. So it's nice to, if somebody can have an alternative and try something else. Obviously, there's situations where we're not telling people to get off of their medication, right? You need to talk to your doctor, but it's awesome to actually see some concrete evidence out there for an herb like this.
Yeah, I love that. And we have an upcoming, one of the episodes in this season is what's the big deal with Ozempic? And I'm a firm believer we are, as a company of integrated medicine, utilizing Eastern approaches, diet, lifestyle, supplementation as your foundation. But there's a time and a place when we need Western. But we got to be cautious. There is a time and a place, and that time and the place is not always right here, right now. And so we're going to kind of talk about what's going on with Ozempic, what's happening in the body. But one thing that I wanted to touch upon is scientifically what berberine is doing in the body. I found this and I thought it was awesome. So how does berberine work? The main mechanism through which berberine exerts its effects actually appear to be the stimulation of the enzyme. Here it is. Adenosine monophosphate. Wait, let's start that over. Adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase. That's a mouthful. You can also just call it AMPK. Yes. So that's going to be this master regulator of cellular energy homeostasis that's involved in a wide range of biological processes, including the regulation of glucose, lipid, and protein metabolism. So really what it's doing is it's stimulating AMPK, which is going to be in charge of regulating glucose, or going to be a component in charge of regulating glucose. So that's what berberine's doing, is it's stimulating the AMPK in our body. I thought that was just kind of cool to hear.
No, that is really cool. And so I was looking into that as well, and I needed to dumb it down for myself a notch more.
Dumb it down.
So what does that actually mean, right? If we're stimulating these enzymes, basically what it's doing is berberine is helping increase the cell sensitivity to insulin, right? So what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Mm-hmm. The cells, if they're more sensitive to insulin, then less insulin needs to be excreted by the body, right? So big picture, these things, like in a perfect world, we want less insulin to be produced in the body, because when we, have an overproduction of insulin and the cells lose sensitivity, that's when we're getting all of these issues.
And we get the insulin resistance. And I remember early on when I was reading more about insulin, I'd always get confused with insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance. And I would just get them mixed up. And the easiest way, I'm going to dumb it down even more, is you think about caffeine or coffee. If you are drinking a cup of coffee, but as time goes on, you actually need 2 cups to get the same effect. And then, time goes on even more. You need 3 cups, 4 cups to get the same effect. You are building a resistance to caffeine. So the resistance in this case is not something that we want. We don't want that resistance. We actually want to be sensitive to it so that we don't need quite as much. We don't need to continuously up the dose to get the same effect. So the more sensitive we are to the caffeine or to the insulin, the better it is going to be for our body. So I'm glad that you mentioned that the berberine is going to help with the insulin sensitivity in our body.
Yeah. And one thing I just wanted to mention is the berberine, we don't necessarily want to take it every day, long term. It can mess up our microbiome long term. What's interesting is it's actually been shown to be really effective with gut health, used in like short spurts of time. But long term, we don't want to use it every single day. That's actually why we didn't put it in our blood sugar formula, glucose stability. And that's why it's nice to have as just a separate entity so that you don't have the glucose you can take long term. One other thing I just wanted to mention was a lot of studies. The best studies that I found were actually in correlation with people who have PCOS. So, and a lot of people with PCOS are dealing with blood sugar issues, right? And
it's all the core is insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance.
So like my whole thing is with this big craze with berberine is what if it's a lot of people that don't actually know that they have PCOS and they're taking berberine and they're seeing these amazing results. And because there's a lot of undiagnosed PCOS out there. So, and this is helping women, PCOS can be a big attributor to fertility issues. So berberine's also helping with reproductive health, your gut microbiome. I actually started taking it because of what I was reading about it with healing your gut. And then the more I did research on this with it actually helping with your blood sugar issues as well, I've now incorporated it into I take it before every meal that I have.
Great. For a continuous or a certain amount of time. Are you cycling like on and off?
Okay, yeah, I'll take little breaks, but I do try and take it for a couple months at a time.
Yeah. And just to clarify, PCOS, if you're not familiar, polycystic ovarian syndrome, I feel like it's really up and coming. I think doctors are becoming more aware and doing testing with it. I found out I had PCOS years ago, and I did it through 2 different tests, an ultrasound and then blood work as well. But I would say through diet, lifestyle, stress management, supplementation, completely reversed it. I mean, we had super blessed, but we had no issues with pregnancy. A lot of my symptoms that I had originally on with PCOS have disappeared. And so that goes to show it's not, it is something that you can work through. But if you are curious to learn a little bit more about PCOS and blood sugar, episode 50 with Vanessa Oli from Root and Remedy, we discuss that further, but I'm glad you mentioned that. Anything else that we need to touch upon or that you could leave with listeners about these formulations or blood sugar metabolism in general?
I would just say, obviously your diet is going to be your most crucial element of all of this, and we can incorporate all the supplements that we want, but we really have to start there. I would start with the glucose goddess method. Add a few of those, and then you can also you can take the berberine and the metabolism at the same time. If anyone has a question on which one should I choose, you can choose both.
Love that. And just to recap those 4 methods from Glucose Goddess, the order of your food. So non-starchy vegetables, then proteins and fat, and then starches and sugar. The second one is walk for 10 minutes or move your body for 10 minutes after a meal. Third one is adding a shot of apple cider vinegar to your beverage right before a meal. And then lastly is start with a savory breakfast. And I think that, like you said, that is her first recommendation because it's the easiest swap to implement. So thank you so much for being here, Meg, to explore this conversation, to dive deeper into these formulations and to hear a little bit more about your experience with blood sugar. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun. Awesome. Well, we hope to have you back and explore some other formulations. So we'll enjoy this rainy weather, this stormy week that we have out here in Southern California. I know, it's so gross out. Stay dry. Oh, no, this is good. Not gross. I love it. Awesome. Take care, Meg.